Good.
Good work. Good work.
And is there a way to keep him looking like that?
I had considered the thought.
That's a pretty good look for him.
I was wondering if he even knew it there for a minute until he popped off. So, hey, we're live on YouTube.
Yep.
We are without a chairman and an attorney, so.
About a minute.
Plenty of time.
Jerry, you on a ponytail yet?
It just won't quite get there. I keep being told it'll be there soon, and boy, it sure will make it nicer. It's hot.
It's almost time.
Hey, Lydia, when we get started, Tim Moreland is going to do the presentation. I think you saw that. So we'll need to bring him in as a presenter when he's ready, or when we're ready.
Thank you. We have an attorney.
All right. Well, take us live. We'll get this thing started while Chip plugs his ISDN line back in.
Wait, dials up.
We're live.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to our Chattanooga City Council Strategic Planning Meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. The first item that we have on our agenda this afternoon is a quarterly report from the Budget and Finance Committee. And I do believe we will have a staff presentation, but Councilwoman Burrs, would you like to tee this up and get us started with this presentation?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you all had asked way back for quarterly reports on how the money you're giving to the various departments is working. We've had one of these reports, and this is the next one. And Tim Moreland, I believe, sent a copy out to you of what he's going to go over today so that you would have your questions ready. It's a great idea. It's for accountability. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tim, and you guys can raise your hands with questions you've got. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay, council members?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, I have a short presentation kind of going over the measures, and I'd love to hear some of your questions and answers. Before we get started, I thought I would do a little bit of framing, kind of talking about the data-driven journey we've been going on as a city to kind of frame this moment in time and give it a little bit of context. So is that okay with folks as a beginning?
Yep.
Tim, are you going to be putting a presentation up on the screen?
Yes, I am. I apologize for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully you can see that now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful. So the office and the the city's data-driven work, began about 5 years ago. We started with a performance program. We mirrored it off of a Baltimore city stat program and other programs that were like that. Were very kind of top down, very kind of high intensity, a little bit of a blame and shame kind of game that a lot of the cities were using. And we didn't have a whole lot of data associated with that. So, but we wanted to start with something that would work other places and see how we could take that model and mold it into something that's going to work in Chattanooga. So over time, we found a couple, this has been a journey of lessons learned, but we found that, it was hard to have buy-in when we had straight top down and we didn't include the departments and have their feedback on what's important and what their priorities are. Data was really hard to find and hard to get at, and that was a continuing problem for folks, especially if you want to be data driven. If you can't get to the data easily, then it's really hard to see and visualize that you can't be very data driven with it. And so we wanted to we realized we had to kind of back up. And so we've done many kind of iterations of this. Our current iteration is probably going to change again, but we, like I said, we involve departments more fully, try to understand what their priorities are and how that fits into the strategic, approach that the mayor's office has put forth. Make sure that they have buy-in and are committed to that. We, instead of doing a straight top down, we've done what we call the sandwich method for change, right? So we have the top line leaderships preaching the message of the importance of being citizen focused and data driven, and having the chatted data meetings and kind of setting that standard at the top. And then we also, from the bottom up, we do a lot of training and support. So we do a lot of empowering our Chattanooga employees with data trainings or Peak Academy, or individualized dashboards for their individual office. So that's kind of a both and we kind of meet in the middle. And we've really shifted our focus from one of kind of the shame and blame and more towards learning and leading. And that means we are, when something goes wrong, instead of trying to shame folks, we get really curious. We want to know what's happening. And so we start to ask lots of questions, and we start to do some root cause analysis, and we start to look at and identify ways we can learn from what we're seeing and how we can begin to address them. And we've just started to tiptoe into more of a predictive model, where we were in the past kind of looking back at data and seeing what was happening, and now we're trying to use data to be predict what we think is going to happen in the future. And that's kind of our next iteration that we're moving in towards right now. So it's been kind of a long story arch. I think culture change takes years. You measure it on years, not on months. And we've started to kind of transition into having some of that culture change go deeper into the organization, which is really exciting for us. And so part of this kind of change story is making sure that leaders and leadership has the best available data and information at their fingertips for decision making. And so that's why one of the things we wanted to do and talk and kind of demo, just so you can see it, is the council dashboard we created for the city council members, because we've seen success in the departmental side and the middle manager side of having ready access to information where you can answer questions and understand what's happening. And so we thought it makes a lot of sense to have something similar for council. And so I wanted to spend a little time going through, and hopefully the information we provide in the dashboard will provide some context and support for your decision making. It will help with some citizen inquiries, and also just kind of give you a fuller picture of what's happening in the city. And the nice thing about data, it kind of gives you that objective view of what's actually going on, what's happening there. So there's two different levels of the dashboard we created for you all. There is the 30,000 foot what's going on in the city kind of thing, right? And that's where you can see for the whole city, for some basic results areas, and also compare what that looks like compared to other council districts. And then if you want to dive deeper, we have ones that are designed specifically for your council district. So you can actually understand kind of what's going up close and personal on your own dashboard. So I don't know if folks have computers in front of them, but I thought we could maybe I could walk you through what the login is like. And if you can want to join along with me while I show you how to log in, it'd be probably good for you to kind of test it out and see if you can access this as well. So anytime you are, you want to get to this internal site, the name is internal.chattadata.org. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat as well, just so that everyone has access to it. Let's see here. There we go. So when you get to internal.chattadata.org, it will have you into a sign-on screen. We try to make this as easy as possible. What this is just the same username and password you use for getting into your computer or your city computer, or getting into your city email. It's the same username and password. So what you do is start typing in your email address. And once you type in the full email, it recognizes this as a City of Chattanooga email address. So it's going to try to redirect you to the single sign-on site for all city to use your city username and password. So type in your email address. You'll see SSO enabled. That means you're good to go. You push sign in. And that's going to redirect you to this single sign-in site. I might have already signed in. It looks like I had. So the single sign-in site, it basically just asks again for your username and password. And once you put those in and put enter, you will get redirected to here. Since you, this is kind of your personalized page, it's a little bit confusing to have it go straight to here because really you want to see what assets are available. We encourage folks, once you first log in, to either start searching directly up in the top right-hand corner or to go to the home page by clicking on the top left-hand corner. I'll go ahead and pause. Are folks able to log in? Thumbs up, yes, no.
No, I'm on mine.
I'm on my computer.
Yeah. You're seeing things, but you can't log in at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will say if you have any issues when you're trying to access this, you can contact me, and if you want any special trainings, we can help you through that as well. So once you've signed in with your city email and address, you're basically just going to search for city council. Let's see, I think it's called a council dashboard. Yeah, council dashboard. So you're just going to search for council dashboard, and that's going to pull up the council dashboard. So this is, like I said, there's two different views. There's the 30,000 foot view, which is where I'm going to go through now. And then down at the bottom, there's the individualized ones as well. So let's start with the 311 request. We try to provide a little bit of text and context about what we're seeing there. In this case, District 2 and 3 seem to have the highest volume of 311 requests. This is looking over, I think we had this from last 3 years, yeah. And so, let's see here, I'm just gonna make this a little bit smaller so I can see what I'm doing. So you can see the different types. You can tell brush collection and bulk trash. And this is the case almost in every council district. It makes up half of the requests that come in. So most of the volume actually through 301 is just coming in through these bulk and trash requests. Then you'll see that the distribution's a little bit different. So for example, in District 2, loose leaf seems to be a much bigger proportion than other districts. So there's just maybe a lot of trees in District 2. I don't know. So you can see just kind of total volumes and how the volumes compare by area. You can also compare our on-time requests. On-time meeting what we call our service level agreements. So how quickly we say we're going to resolve a service request. You can see how those compare for each council district. Again, this is, I think, over, let's see, this is over all time. Oh, this is from 2016 on. You can change the date range. So if we wanted to do it from, I don't know, if we were only interested in 2018 to now, we could do that as well. And then you'll see that the graphic will go ahead and update. So you can see it's a little bit worse if we do the more recent ones. And then if you want to see where the location of those service requests are, this is just the last 7 days. So this gobbledygook you see here is just all service requests for the last 7 days. Again, you can filter it out if we just want to see things in District 9 and we want to see, let's see. Yeah, so I think we can do that. So now we can see these are just the ones completed in the last 7 days for District 9. You can hover over them and it tells you what happened in those different locations. So you can, I know you get a lot of requests about 311 and what's going on with 311 requests and how long it's taking to resolve. You can get some information here. When we go to the individual council dashboards, you can actually dive even deeper to get a sense for what's happening, and I'll kind of explain what that looks like. So that's a 311 request. Next one's code violations. This is code violations by districts. Again, you'll see something very similar to the 311 where the majority of the requests are litter, overgrowth, and housing in District 9, 8, and 7, those take up the bulk of the types of those requests. So I think litter is the highest on all 3 of those. Again, you can filter these however you want. This one's important if you want to see the kind of over time, how that's been changing for your council district. So we can look at council district 8. Counter code violations in 2013, there was a lower level, I think 500, but by 2016, it had the highest to going to 2,333. So there was a dramatic increase in code violations found in that 2-year period. Something interesting happened there. I will, the last value for 2020 is going to look lower than everything else because we're still in 2020. And so those will continue to rise as the year goes on. And this might be interesting. So this is the kind of like for 311, we had meeting SLAs. This is % of violations brought into compliance. So ideally, we want to bring the violations into compliance before they get cited at court. And so that's what this is looking at. Again, this is over, I think, from 2013 on. So we can choose different date ranges, and we can even choose dynamic date ranges. So if we want to know what this rate has been for the last 90 days, we can put that in and see what the citing to court is. It looks like in the last 90 days, only the council district 2 is below that kind of 8% threshold, which we think is a good citing to resolution rate. Basically means it doesn't have to get escalated to legal. So you can kind of see how you compare. You can see what's happening and how those things relate to each other. And then for work orders, there's just a lot of stuff gets put into work orders, especially a lot of the work the city does through the public works work orders. One thing I will say is lots of them were missing locational information because they kind of were citywide. And so you won't see those show up for everything, but you can see the count of work orders by council district. And you can see the count over time again of dollars invested. So you can see this is by council districts, the value of the work orders invested over time. So you can get a sense for how much money is getting invested through work orders that we can actually, what we call geocode back to a council district. Again, there's lots of, many of those work orders we weren't able to just because there wasn't locational data because they were multi-council district projects and maybe even citywide. So that's kind of the service side of things. Then on the safer streets, we have lots of data about the police incidents. Here's the last overall for the last kind of was this the last? Yeah, the last year. Each one of these are the types of violations, and then you can see by council district what the proportion is for that. So of simple assault, it looks like council district 7 and 8 seem to have the highest, and of for example motor vehicle theft, it seems to be council district 7. Again, these are so you can kind of click and see what the proportion is for these different things, and filter the days if you want as well. That's just to give you an overall by type and then by council district. If you wanted to see how the count of incidents are changing over time, you can see that listed here. Again, the last year is lagging because we haven't finished the year, so it's always going to look lower, and it will continue to increase throughout the year. And then now we can see the actual counts by council district by type of incident. So within your council district, what's the proportion look like, and what types of incidents are occurring. So this is, again, this is all very high level. You can compare very easily between council districts and also get a sense for what's happening all citywide. We did the same thing with fire. Again, most of them are rescue EMS related calls. And that's the case for almost every single council district. And where the location of the building fires are, we have from April 2013 present. So you can get a sense for where they are by council district, and you can zoom in, and the map's dynamic and it will update based on where you're going. This is what the fire department sometimes refers to as their fire belt occurring right here, which you can see in the heat map. And then response time. So how are the response times comparing to the different departments? You can see they're spread. There's a spread from 4.4 to almost up to 6 minutes. So by kind of a 1.5 minute differential between the council districts, with lots of variation between those, but fairly steady for each council district. And that has to do generally with the usually has to do with the location of the council district and kind of the street network and how big of a service area the fire districts have to handle there. And then on the growing economy, we have the land developing permits, unemployment rates, permit time to process, business licenses, and then also another near and dear probably to a lot of people, traffic jams. So we pull from ways to tell where the traffic jams are happening. So if I wanted to see where the, maybe I'm just wanting to know on the streets, not all the big roads, but just the local streets where the traffic jams happening. So I can filter by that. I can see these little different areas that are starting to pop up where there seems to be traffic jams locally. So this is just a wealth of information. You can filter and spend all kinds of time diving in and answering questions that you're seeing issues with. But what I wanted to talk about was the individualized ones. So it's going to be very similar to what I just showed you in the 20,000 foot view, right? So you have your individual council dashboard, you know, map of where your council district is. I don't know why, just because you already know that, but it's just a nice little visual at the top. And then we break into the same kind of things, looking at 311 and other things. So here's an example of how you might be able to use the visuals and the information here to kind of get to some deeper understand what's happening in your council district, right? So if we scroll down and looked at our on-time rate for doing our service requests, you can see that there's a downtrend from 2018 on. Right now we're at 30%, 37% of them we are not meeting our target, and 63% we are. So you look at that and say, for my council district, what is going on? Why is there a downward trend that's in the number of SLAs or kind of these time to complete standards the city set for itself? So reading the context, there is something that happened in July 2018. We changed our bulk bag waste and bulk trash and brush collection from 7 days to 4 days in 2018. And so if you remember, those take up the majority of the types of calls. It's these three right here. They take up the majority of the calls in district, what district are we in? District 4. And so what happened was the days changed the standard from 7 to 4. And so if we didn't meet that 4, then it would say it was out of time. So we can look at the data and see how our on time month to month actually changed. You can see this is when the change happened, and you can see already ever since then there's been a increase, and it looks like it spikes around April, May, June, July. So May, June, July, there's a spike when those go up. That's usually when we have more of those types of calls, those brush and other trash collection pickup. So there's a trend, there's an annual trend of that spiking. There's a trend of since 2018 and we changed our standard, that number has gone up. So that's also increased the number of non-compliance requests. And then if you look most recently in April, you guys remember what happened in April? We had the tornado, right? That dramatically increased both the number of requests coming in. As you can see, it's these April and May are the highest in record for the last few years. So we increased the numbers of total cases coming in, and also the non-compliance rate, which also pushed this number even further to 37%. So we can kind of get a sense for what's happening there. we're still having pretty high non-compliance rates for coming down from April. And that could be a combination of, still trying to play catch up from that. And also just that there's more requests coming in, especially as you saw in these last few months. Maybe it's because people are at home more, I don't know, but this seems to be a broader volume. But I think an important question you might want to ask is, well, how is the actual average days to complete these requests changed over time? And so if we look at this chart, we can see these are the kind of average days to complete. Again, in February, let's see, in July of 2018, we changed. This is when we changed to that new standard. And you can see the average days has stayed fairly stable, right around 4. Sometimes it goes up to 5, but 4.5, pretty stable from ever since we changed the time. So even though we changed the standard of wanting to meet it within 4 days, the average time has not substantially changed until we get to April. And that's when the average time goes to 8. And so what we think we're seeing in these increased times is that we were hit so heavily by the tornado, and that put all our resources there, which then backlogged the rest of the city. We're still kind of dealing with that, and the wait times are still going up. We are seeing a downward trend. So April, it was 8, May, it was 4.9, June, it was 7, and July, it was 6.5. So hopefully those will start keep on coming down, but this is the trend you would start to look at to see what's going on. Again, with any of these, you can actually filter them if you want to see by request type. If we do brush collection, I'm guessing we're going to see a very similar trend, meaning that that's probably one of the main things that is driving this number. Yeah, April, May, and June, those average days to complete are still increasing and causing that. So you can actually take something you're hearing from your residents and start to dive and drill down deeper into root causes and things that are happening. In this case, having to do with people staying home from COVID, changing our performance from a target from 7 to 4, and also getting hit with the tornado in April and the ramifications of that. So this is the individualized one. It's the same kind of thing with code enforcement. It's the same layout, so it's very similar with everything that you saw before. It's just individualized to the council district, so you can get a sense for not just how you're comparing against others, but how things are going in your council district over time, and how things are changing for you and your constituents. This is our first rough draft of kind of putting something together that we hope will be useful for you. We love getting feedback and hearing from you on what changes we can make and how we can make it more responsive. Before I go into the departmental reports, I wanted to see if there's any questions or feedback on the dashboards.
I don't.
I'll have one.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I don't see you up here. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hey, Tim.
Yep.
So fascinating to have this information at our fingertips. How do we use this information to improve when we find, for example, a discrepancy? Obviously, the tornado is a good example of an outlier on the bell curve, so to speak. But how do we gather this information, or does administration gather this information during the budget process and use it to evaluate where we should be focusing in certain areas that we may be lacking?
Yeah. So there's a couple ways we use this data and this information. So at the beginning of the BFO process, the data and the measures we're going to track for the year. When we talk about departmental measures, we'll talk about that. We set those, and then we kind of reevaluate them once the new budget cycle starts. And then we're doing monthly check-ins with the department heads, looking at things like brush collection, looking at things like code violation compliance rates, things like that, to see where are there outliers and what's going on in the data. And that's where I said we start to get really curious, and we start to ask a lot of questions about, what do we think is going on here? and seeing if we can do some root cause analysis on what's happening. And then typically we have like a task, if there are things associated with what we're seeing in the numbers and the performance that need follow-ups, then we add that to a kind of a follow-up task tracker that we put together. And then it's either, it might be a task follow-up for that department, for another department to assist that department, or for the operations team to do something and bring it back to the department as well. And so we follow up on those tasks and see if we got deeper to the root cause, or we're able to find a solution or fix for things. And that's typically the way we look at the numbers and use them. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, I think that covers it rather well. And a follow-up question, Madam Chair, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Is if we saw something that was of concern to us in our district and was able to backtrace it to an issue, does that move us to the head of the line when it comes to that issue being a topic of conversation with the administration? And if that doesn't make sense, I'll try and reword it.
Yeah, I think there's no formal way. I think right now, when you see something, you probably reach out to Maura or something like that. And typically she would bring that up in like the performance 101 meetings when we are looking at the numbers and the data. So that would be the time to address it, and probably how we would look at it, unless it's a, what do you call it? Something that's more time sensitive, I would guess.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Mitchell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tim, do you have a margin of error here? And let me tell you what I'm thinking of. At times, and I'm sure all council people get this, at times I get phone calls or emails, and I turned in a 311 request. It's marked as complete now, but the job has never been done. Is there anyone trying to use this system to follow to see how many times that actually happens?
Yeah, that's a really good question, interesting one. It's kind of typically what I think happens for those kinds of marks is, well, like there's two things. There's one where it's marked as done and it just doesn't get done, which is an issue. And then there's when it's marked as done, but then it gets what they call transitioned into a work order, so it's done on one system, but still being processed in another, which is very confusing for citizens. So there's kind of two things going on there. We have talked about trying to better link the 311 requests to the work orders so that we can actually see, when they transition and if they're still in process or when they're closed out from one to the other. Honestly, we're not there yet, but that's something that's been discussed quite a bit, and we looked at before. And then on the other one, where it just never gets completed. I think there's one thing we could look at is the callback request types, because typically what happens is there's a when you don't have resolution, there's a request type when you call back and check up on something. And so we could check on the number of those callbacks by district and by location to see if those are increasing or decreasing, to see if we're doing a better job of closing those out and having less people calling back on their service requests.
Well, two comments. Is there no way to mark it work order instead of done? And then the other one is I've been told, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I've been told when someone recontacts the city because it hasn't been done yet, the first one automatically gets closed out and a new one's opened. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that's what I've been told.
I don't know that. I have heard in the past that I think Public Works is trying to do a better job of the comments and narrative on the service request, so that when it does get transitioned to a work order, that's put in there. So I think that that's supposed to be happening now, but I would have to double check with the Public Works folks, or maybe it's Derek's office, or maybe it's the Public Works folks, to see if that's actually happening. The other thing is we're transitioning to a new 311 system, which will have better ties and integrations, so that we hopefully won't have this problem in the future, because we'll be able to kind of fully integrate, because we'll own the 311 system and be much easier, and it will be much easier to integrate into that the what they call the City Works Public Works program, and hopefully we can solve it that way.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Gilbert?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a great tool that our constituents we can use, but some of our constituents we're still not familiar with computers. We actually, that might be a excuse me, Tony Simon question. I know one time at 301, when we call in, they'll say that it's been completed or something of the nature, but it hasn't. And have they changed that language?
Yeah, I think that might be a good question for Tony or Maura, if like the language on the completion or not has changed when it transitions to a work order. Do you know if either of them are on or can answer that?
I can't see them.
Mr. Salmons is coming on.
Thank you, Chairman Gilbert, for that question. In conjunction with what Tim just indicated to you, we have been working with the software vendor to get that language changed. That particular vendor that we've been using was bought out by another vendor, and to have that, what that we look at as a small quick fix, they're unable to make that change for us. So we're in the process now, as Tim indicated, waiting to finalize our upgrade to our system that will resolve that issue in totality. But to change the verbiage of that has been a challenge for us.
So you're saying that our system, you mean the city system, be upgraded and they'll make a change then?
The upgrade has already addressed that as being a priority to make sure that we won't have that as an issue going forward. But the current software that we have, we're unable to get that completed because the vendor themselves are not doing any servicing to that.
Do you know about what time? Or do we have any dates saying that that would be completed?
We're in the testing stage right now of our upgrade. We're hoping to have this up and running before the end of the calendar year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Oglesby, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did, but Councilman Gilbert asked it.
Okay,
Exactly what I was looking for.
okay, sir.
Thank you.
I see no other questions. So Tim, if you want to continue.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. I also created a short video of how to log in because it might not be clear the first couple times you do it. And so on the presentation that I shared with you all, it has a short 3-minute video on how to log in and access your council dashboard. The other good thing about logging in is we don't just house the council dashboard there, but a lot of other related city data and dashboards and information. So there's a lot of insights and understanding you can gain by gaining access to the internal site. All right, so departmental overview. Like I said, so when we're doing our departmental performance, we start with that BFO process. We do some refinement at the beginning of the year, which we're kind of doing now, which makes sense, especially in the light of COVID. And then we transition into these monthly performance meetings where we do that task tracker and discussions. The other thing we do is we also have a kind of what's underneath the umbrella of just like consistent engagement. So those are where we will do what we call these data jam sessions with the departments to kind of really understand what their needs are. We do a lot of design. We try to incorporate a lot of design thinking into our work, and so designing with users and understanding their needs is a key component of that. So we do these jam sessions to understand, what do they need and how can we build it for them. And so that often relates in some kind of data related tool, updating the data that's available to them, adding fields that they need, and maybe even building dashboards for the departments. Then we do some coaching and also year-round training through a different kind of ad hoc or structure, like in our Data Academy or our Peak Academy. And then we sometimes do deeper dives with folks too, over and above the performance one-on-ones and the monthly chatted data meetings. Each month during the mayor's data-driven performance meeting, we highlight one department to talk about their performance and their data-driven journey and talk about what they're doing there. but sometimes we go deeper. So we have like our Chatanalytics projects where we're doing predictive analytics, trying to be looking forward into backward data. And then also sometimes we do performance partnerships where we actually go do a deep dive in with a department and try to help them use the tools of process improvement and data analytics to actually identify where they can find some improvements and make some consistent change there. So that's kind of a broad framework of how we run our performance program. I will say this is that generally we do, we try to encourage folks to be curious and to use their measures as opportunities to focus their effort. We think one of the, where you have as a leader, your focus is really important. And one of the really powerful things about measurement is that it focuses you hopefully on the right things. And so we hope that the measurements focus folks and gets them curious and creates a kind of culture of learning. So we want them to be looking at the measures, seeing what's going on, and ask why we're seeing what we're seeing, and hopefully learn from that. We also have pushed them to create challenging measures. And so I think every year departments are pushing themselves a little bit further to see if they can reach a little bit further. So we don't always hit 100%, but we do our best. So what you're seeing here is kind of the overview by department. The green is measures met, and the red is measures not met. Excuse me. And you can also look at that by 100%. So this is, you can see total volumes. You can see Public Works definitely has, and Finance have the most measures. But if you want to look at kind of completion or a meeting target by percentage, you can do that. So you can compare apples to apples for departments and see who's meeting what. Some departments who are meeting fewer have much fewer measures, like only 2 or 3. So if they're missing 2 or 3, their percentage of not met gets very high very quickly. So little COVID caveat, as we know, this living in the year, this has been an interesting year. COVID has impacted all departments. We've seen some very interesting things as a result of kind of transitioning to fully online work. In some of our inspection offices, like our LDO and our code enforcements, we're actually seeing performance improvements as a result of the work. Something about being able to go straight to the site and not having to go back to the office and just being able to enter information right there actually makes us much more effective in the field. Something we were not aware of or didn't know was going to happen. But then we've had places that have been, negatively impacted. So youth and family development, it's very hard to provide a lot of those services when a lot of them were centered around the youth and family development centers and getting folks into those centers. So as you'll see in the measures, some departments were more heavily impacted by COVID than others, youth and family development being one of those examples. This is the case for—
Let me interrupt you for just a minute. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We've been going a while now, and I know you have an agenda. Do we also have an attorney-client today?
As far as I know, Madam Chair, we don't have all of our questions answered yet, so I don't think we're going to do an attorney-client this evening.
I'm not sure what
I'm not sure whose phone that is.
I don't know whose phone that is.
Is Bird on this call?
That was me, my fault.
That was you. Okay.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
We do have a couple of items that we need to cover. I'm not sure, how much.
Tim, what's your timeline? Tim?
Apologize, I was muted. So I think, to get through and go through department to department and agency by agency is going to take a while, but it might be more effective just to take individual questions as council members have them and have had a chance to review the measures and the information.
Well, I was thinking that because you graciously sent out all this next part to us. So let me ask council's pleasure. What What are your thoughts about that? Or do you have questions? I see nothing.
Madam Chair, really quick, I mean,
Yeah,
I
go
just-
ahead.
I'd like a little time to kind of play around with this and click through on a lot of the different data, and maybe we can regroup at another time in case there's further questions. There's enough information that it's a little too hard to absorb it all,
Well,
in just
I think
45 minutes.
you're right. Councilman Ledford, I see your hand up.
I agree. I would like a little time to kind of dive in and look at this because I'm sure I'm going to have several questions. And one of those is with the COVID component in this is what the city's plan is to take this valuable information that we have gathered and how we've responded to COVID, whether it's how we work from home or how services have been impacted. Is it an opportunity for us to reinvent the mousetrap, so to speak? And I'm wondering, I've asked this several times and I'll keep asking, what are we going to learn from COVID to improve government and services to Chattanooga residents? But that was just my statement there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair,
Yes,
may
ma'am.
we set a time certain to come back together in strategic planning to
Why don't,
to
instead
let
of,
people gather their thoughts?
yeah, sure. Why don't we do it it looks like the 1st of September, we'll have a strategic planning on the 1st.
Okay.
We have another presentation that we're going to have on the 18th. So that'll give everybody a month to go through it. Let's just reschedule it for the 1st.
All right, do me a favor. This is to my colleagues. As you get those questions, if you would jot them down and let me know what they are or let Tim know what they are, much like we did with the budget, so that we'll be able to answer those, because I think this is a very important report. And to go along with what Councilman Ledford said, where there are shortfalls to really be able to do the deep dive. Tim, does that work for you?
Yeah, that works great. And also, while you're on the platform and looking at stuff and say, this is great, but what I'd really like to see is not X, but Y. We'd like to hear that too, so that we can customize it so it's going to be the most useful.
That would be fabulous. So again, to my colleagues, if you would do that and kind of circulate anything you have to all of us, then we can get back on it the first week in September. Tim, I can't tell you how fabulous this is. And the district dashboard is just great. Thank you very, very much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think we can take this down. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. And Miss Lydia, you can excuse Mr. Moreland.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, next on our agenda, we have other business, pending presentations and education sessions. Madam Clerk, let's move the GARE and the racial equity training up to put it under A, please.
Yes.
That's really where it should be, because that's what this is going to be, as a education session, not, it really doesn't have anything, I don't think, to do with legislation at this point. It may lead to some. But while we're there, let's go ahead. And I think we were going to have some discussion on the GARE and racial equity training. Is that correct, Councilman Mitchell? Or I guess, Councilman Mitchell, do you know where we are on the GARE? Are you muted?
I think he's frozen.
It does appear that way, doesn't it? That happened to me a while just before we came on. It kicked me off, froze me and kicked me off. Okay.
Mr. Chair, Councilwoman Coonrod is on here. Maybe she can respond.
Councilwoman Coonrod?
Well, I know, Chip, about the 3 years, you just suddenly forgot my name. I'm not in J, but At this point, we're just waiting on Beverly. I guess once the council decide if we want to utilize Gare or use someone else to take the training, or Mara, she had a great idea, is doing a council retreat. And whichever way that we choose, we just need to lock down a date and do it for those who are interested in it. It would be great if all of us would take the training, but I guess for those that are interested in
Well,
doing the training,
let me ask you this, what is the next step?
that's the next step. We have to decide which, do we want to take the Gare training that the city government offers, or
Well,
are we wanting to go through another organization?
We can do a quick poll, a consensus, if we need to. We can make that decision in a hurry. Let me go to Councilwoman Burrs. She has her hand up.
Yeah, I thought I understood from Mara relative to the Gare that they were finishing up their training, which led to the next phase, which would be to take it out to others, including us. Am I mistaken about that? I thought she mentioned October or something.
Ms. Sullivan, I see you're on the attendees with us. Would you mind to speak to this? Go ahead, Ms. Lydia, and bring Ms. Sullivan on.
She's on her way.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Ms. Sullivan.
Hi. Thanks for the questions. Yes, sir.
Were you going to do some investigation for us, or reporting back as far as where we are on the letting the team that we have already do the Gare training?
I hate to say this, but I think that Beverly was, but I can, I hate with Zoom to keep passing the mic, the virtual mic. But what I can say is, as an update, we are in a stage of our internal government Gare training that we are developing an action plan and a racial equity toolkit that will be presented to council. And I think that's what Councilwoman Burrs was referring to. So there is a next phase that we will be presenting to council for y'all's buy-in and y'all's work around that. But there are trainings that Beverly was going to look into for elected officials with the Gare organization that they could bring to y'all as an intermediate step before we brought that racial equity toolkit to you in our community action plan.
Okay. All right.
And I think Beverly was looking for a date. I think she had talked to Councilwoman Coonrod maybe about a date, if I remember that right.
Yeah, she had reached out to Mitchell and I, and that's why I informed you guys that it was just, we're ready for the next step to nail down a date or decide which way that we want to go. But thank you, Mara, for clarifying that again.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. All right, Ms. Lydia, you can excuse Ms. Sullivan. Okay, council, if we're looking for a date, is this something, I'll tell you what, Councilman Mitchell is back with us, it looks like. Councilwoman Coonrod, do you want to touch base with Ms. Beverly and try to get some options on some dates to present to council? I guess one thing that we need to know is how long the training is, what a session would look like. If we could do it on a Tuesday before strategic planning, or in lieu of strategic planning on one of the days that we don't have strategic planning, if that's okay with the council. I'm not sure how many of us could set aside a whole weekend for a retreat.
I'll be honest, I can't.
Okay.
I mean, I can't set aside a weekend either for a retreat, but I mean, if that's the goal of the council, if everybody's wanting to go with GARE. I mean, that's what I'm asking. Are we wanting to use GARE with Ms.
Okay.
Beverly or?
Let me put it this way. I'm asking the council at this time, is there any objections to using GARE for our racial equity training? And I'm looking for hands at this time for objections. Okay, I see no objections to using GARE for our equity training. So Councilwoman Coonrod, if you would get with Ms. Beverly and let's find out what a session would consist of. See if we can, if we need to, possibly maybe have it in a couple of sessions. We can either do it during strategic planning or on the days that we don't have strategic planning. But we do need to know what a typical session, how long of a session it might be.
Okay,
So
sure.
you can do that? Okay. Very good. Thank you. And Madam Clerk, move, like I said, just move that up to A under education sessions. Now, next on our agenda is Juneteenth as a paid holiday. And I know Councilwoman Coonrod is also on this one, but I got an email from Councilman Gilbert. Is that right? That you would like to have Ms. Beverly in an HR committee meeting during strategic planning on the 18th, discuss the cost and everything involved in creating this as a city holiday. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
Okay. So, Madam Clerk, next strategic planning on the 18th, we will have an HR committee meeting that will focus on Juneteenth as a paid holiday.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any questions, comments about that, council? Okay. Number 3, we also have non-owner occupied STVRs. Councilwoman Coonrod, you making any headway with that?
Well, Phil and I haven't gotten together because I thought the process was that we had to discuss it as a council and the committees and then create legislation. So I don't know if that's now back changing to.
Well, I think, and Mr. Attorney, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or that someone on the council, typically council brings a piece of legislation to the chair, and the chair decides which committee it needs to be heard in, assigns it to that committee, and then we would hear it in that committee and then decide if we needed more time to develop this legislation or if we would be ready to put it on the agenda. Councilwoman Burrs.
Mr. Chair, I think Councilwoman Coonrod's correct. We've never, we've not even decided if we want to do that legislation for it to go to Phil. To my knowledge, I don't know that we've discussed the matter and then to take it far enough for legislation to be brought back to us, unless I've missed something in one of our meetings.
Well, at this point in the discussion, I'm not even really sure, unless we are planning on just banning non-owner occupied short-term vacation rentals, I'm not sure what the discussion would even be about.
Well, that's what we were going to discuss. I don't know what it's, if there were to be legislation, we haven't discussed it in our meeting to know what it would be about. So I'm with you.
Okay. Councilwoman Coonrod?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the reason why I said that is because previous when Phil and I have created legislation or I've drafted up something and then it's presented, you know, I've got scolded a little bit from council as to why did I do it that way. So I'm getting confused about, you know, which way actually that we're supposed to do, because it seems to happen with me a lot. But the point of me bringing this up is because legislation was passed in other cities to phase out non-owner occupied short-term vacation rentals based on, zip codes or whatever. And I wanted to see if we can do that strategically in certain districts. My district, per se, I want to phase out non-owner occupied, grandfather the ones in that we already have. So that was the point of this legislation. I don't know if anybody else will be interested in that, but I would like to have something done to kind of phase out non-owner occupied.
Okay. If we're going to hear it in a committee, or if we just want to discuss it during strategic planning, Councilwoman Coonrod, if you want to, and I don't know why we couldn't do it next week. Or next on the 18th. If you want to have some thoughts gathered, if you want to present, would you like to present something to this council on the 18th concerning this for council discussion? And then we can see what kind of legislation we can create around this. If you would like to present something next week, is that what you'd like, or not next week, the 18th? Would you like to present something to this council for consideration?
Well, I'll just get with Phil, and hopefully I can get a second sponsor from somebody on council so we can tackle the issue. Because at this point, I'm kind of feeling like we just kind of putting it off with several other things that are on here. So I'll just get with Phil about it.
We don't have to. I'm asking if you want to address this on the 18th. We don't have to put it off. We can address it right now if you want, if you're ready to.
I mean, we supposed to be it don't matter.
Okay.
I'll get with Phil. That's fine. Next week, that's fine.
The 18th. Okay. All right. So when we come to this item next week, if you'd like to present something to the council for consideration, and then we'll see if we can draft legislation around it.
Well, it'll already be drafted. Y'all can just add your input.
Okay. All right. Very good. Next on our agenda is board appointments. We have about 3 Board of Sign Appeals, District 7, Community Development Advisory. Madam Clerk, would you mind maybe sending out a little bit of information about this particular board? It looks like we have several vacancies on this board.
Yes.
You know, what this board does, how many times they meet. And then we have Office of Multicultural Affairs. Okay, council, we've got about 30 minutes before our agenda session, and we can, if you want to, go ahead and cover a couple of items that we normally cover during our agenda session. If you'd like to do it now, or if you want a break before 3:30.
Chair,
Yeah, Councilman Gilbert.
I just want to make on the strategic planning on 811, it's not going to be human resources given the education, it's going to be the fire department. On down on 6, 4, 8, 4.
Yeah, that's under agenda session. I guess I don't understand what you're telling me.
On 811, it was going to be HR presenting. It's not going to be presenting HR. It's going to be fire department.
You mean on the 18th?
On 811.
Yeah.
It says fire.
Huh?
It's
It says
fire.
department report fire on 811.
It's just a department report. But I thought on the 18th, you wanted to have an HR committee meeting.
That's true, but I'm just saying that on this sheet right here, on 11, it's going to be the fire department giving the education and not HR.
Chairman, I believe Mr. Gilbert, he received an earlier version of this. The fire department was changed later today, and that is the version that you all have in your folders showing the fire department on 811.
Yeah, that's what I have. I've got the fire department on 811.
I got the old version. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, there we go. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, I'll tell you what, while we've got a few minutes.
Mr. Chair, I
Councilman
just did have my hands up. Okay.
Oh, there you go. Yes, sir.
Okay, if I may, sir.
Yes, sir.
Last week, we had a discussion on the Irwin Marina contract.
Yes, sir.
And since then, there's been further discussion on that matter regarding the length of time that was on the original proposal. Since then, Richard Beelan and the city attorney has had discussion with them and has taken into consideration everything that they heard from us that was a major concern regarding the length of contract and some other related information. If I may, Mr. Chair, I would like for maybe Mr. Beelan and Mr. Noblet to come and elaborate on what has happened since then to see if this can be brought up for reconsideration.
Sure.
Thank you. Phil, you want to kick it off for Richard?
I don't see Mr. Beelan in the attendance right now.
Okay,
Wait a minute. Oh, he's already, I'm sorry, he's at the top of the list. Miss
okay.
Lydia, go ahead and bring Mr. Beelan in, please.
He's on his way.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Noblet, if we were to bring this back up, how and when we would need to do it, sir?
Well, I would recommend that you bring this up at the beginning of your next meeting on here. There are
at the 6 o'clock meeting.
Yes, sir. At your 6 o'clock meeting. The question is under Robert's Rules of Order, you could either move to rescind the action that was taken at the last meeting, and that action was a vote of 2-7 that failed to approve the resolution, or you could ask to reconsider that motion, which is allowed under Robert's Rules of Order, Section 36, either one. I think that should be done at the most immediate decision-making ability after your first meeting. I was a little bit hesitant on saying that it should be just a motion to reconsider because that meeting ended last week with a vote of 2-7. The reason for that reconsideration or a motion to rescind in connection with this would be the aspect of we at least got with the vendor because there was some concern about whether this was an agreement that would last for a total of 20 years at the last meeting. The RFP that went out in connection with this case went that way, and it was a request for that length of time. However, the tenant is willing to agree to at least provide for a termination by convenience by the city at the end of 5 years. That would allow both parties to be able to see how things are going at the end of that term. And I think there was some misunderstanding in the last meeting that you had that this was some long-term lease that was already in effect with this particular vendor because this vendor only got this agreement before in 2015. So it's August of 2015 to the present. And they have agreed to a term in the document here that the city can terminate this agreement for convenience at the end of the first 5 years of this agreement, provided that we give 90 days advance notice. That language is based upon the same terms originally provided in the agreement that were reviewed by your purchasing group. And we thought that was a significant item that should be considered by this body. But right now you voted it down 7-2, and it's got to get back on your agenda for y'all to consider any amendments.
So let me get the process down. We would have a motion to rescind the action.
Yeah.
And in rescinding the action, we would then have a motion from this body to have it placed on the next week's agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So there's actually two actions that have to happen, one this week, one next week, as far as getting it on the agenda.
Yes, sir. Well, one action this week, if you motion to rescind the action, motion to add it to the agenda for next week, if that's what you want to do.
Sure. Okay. Councilman Oglesby, did you have a specific question for Mr. Beelan or would want him to maybe just elaborate a little more on the agreement?
No, I think Phil did a good job of that. And Phil, in addition to that, should the council elect to rescind it and it is brought back up, at that time, it would have to be, an amendment would have to be made to that agreement to reflect what you just explained to us. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but for, I'll tell you what, let me bring Councilman Mitchell in
Yeah.
and then Councilman Ledford, and let's see if anybody has a question for Mr. Beelan. Councilman Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Phil or Richard, either one, would that be the only amendment to the agreement we looked at last week?
Richard, I don't know if you're available right now, but the provisions are in paragraph 3 as to lease term termination. And we have got a provision for that is blue lined or red lined. I can show you those provisions if that's something that y'all would be willing to consider. Those are the only amendments right now. Once you get it,
Those are the only amendments.
yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Councilman Ledford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate Councilman Oglesby's leadership and the administration and the vendor for listening to what our concerns were. I think that it was important, we're digging through the city charter and looking especially at section 2-542, paragraph 5. I want to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. My question to the city attorney is, reading that information, will the section where it says 2010 to 2020 remain in effect and not change or be amended to 2010, 2020 to 2025 in lieu or in support of the 5-year option for termination?
The provision right now here has it commences on August the 1st, 2020, and it says shall continue through July 31st, 2030. But it does provide that if it is the city and the party have to mutually agree upon an option to extend that for 2 additional terms. And it also gives the city the ability to terminate at the end of the first 5 years of the term, as long as we give them 90 days notice. So it's a termination for convenience of the city, and it's at the election of the city if you don't think they're doing a good job.
Okay, so it's not technically coming up for rebidding in 2025, but we're going to have to be Johnny on the spot, or someone will be. Someone's going to have to be Johnny on the spot. I've been through several of these contracts if to recognize any issues. And if that is exercised, how does that affect our ability to send this out to bid? Because that seems to take a long time.
And that would be an issue for Mr. Beelan or the folks that are in ECD that are actually handling this project on there. And they would have to give notice to the tenant 90 days before the end of that term for the first 5 years.
Okay,
So,
but we're not sure, but or somebody sitting in their chairs or sitting in our chairs at that time, because we're talking about an entire administration or a whole another council. Okay, interesting. Interesting. I was really hoping for a 5-year automatic that we didn't have to wait 90 days or try to catch something. I've been through those before, but we'll see where this goes then. Thank you.
One problem in converting from just to a 5-year term outright was the fact that this was an RFP for a 10-year term. And so we were trying not to avoid that provision, which was out for all vendors to be able to participate in a 10-year agreement.
Okay.
Okay.
Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you. Phil, can we just not bid this out? Because I'm with Ledford. I was, kind of look if it was going to change anything, at least say 5 years. Because again, time and time again, I've seen these contracts where the same verbiage is given to us as a council, but when it comes down to it, it's that one small word that you missed or failed, that means you're obligated to renew the option. Or, well, they've been doing so well, we've had no complaints, so we may as well renew it. And I hear you're saying with a 90-day option, but we don't get this information until it's a week before the contract is ending, and then we get hit with, but it's an emergency. we have to have this. So I would rather for it just be rebid out with a 5-year term. And if the organization is that interested in it, they'll rebid on it.
And you currently don't really have anyone that's in there able to continue after, I think the date on here was July the 31st. There was some concern about interruption in business being on the property at that point in time. And I believe Richard will tell you that the folks in the city are not really prepared to be able to do this on their own within a city department. So that was the concern about trying to get it back on your agenda fairly quickly so that y'all would have an option. And it would also give you the option of ending this agreement at the end of 5 years if you wished.
I think we can do it. I mean, COVID has shown us that we can prepare and adjust things accordingly. So I think, it may be a matter that we don't want to do it, but I think we can, and it may need to be done. And what I've seen the government switch and shift during this COVID, anything is possible.
You might want to ask Richard about his folks on what they can do.
Oh,
I don't need to ask him, you the attorney.
Well, I'm not the person that runs a marina, though.
Okay.
let me go on to Councilman Gilbert. Councilman Gilbert.
Thank you, Chair. Phil, I know
Yep.
you said complaints, any complaints. Lastly, we spoke about complaints and giving to the department. That system didn't work. So do we have a new system that will work? That if anyone want to complain about anything, they can send it in and they can be documented and sent to the department? Because again, last time I checked, we couldn't even get into the system to make that complaint.
And is that a complaint about the marina operation or
I'm talking about,
DCD?
well, you said about if it's a 90-day contract, I mean, 90 days you can give reasons why you want this to happen or you want this to continue the contract. Is it 90 days based off of how well they did, or it's just that we just don't want you anymore, we can cancel it?
For any reason, for convenience means that at the 90 days before the end of the term, we could tell them we did not want them to continue.
Okay. So it's a little bit different than what we talked about before, when if it's not a complaint, then we just keep it moving.
Yes, sir. I mean, and a lot of times it's going to be dependent upon if you're having a problem with that vendor, getting that vendor to do that. But that's a issue of whether the vendor has defaulted on the terms under the contract. For convenience means for the convenience of the city. For convenience of the tenant would mean for convenience of the tenant. And that provision is in this document that would allow you to do that at the almost 5-year term if you don't feel like you're comfortable with what they're doing.
But we have to keep up the 90 days, make sure that we don't go over 90 days before the contract renews.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Ledford, back to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Phil, I have a question. Since we're going to make an amendment or a proposed amendment or possibly make an amendment, is there a way to put in the amendment that council must be notified 60 days in advance of 60 days or 90 days so that we have some sort of trigger mechanism that we are made aware of, because Councilwoman Coonrod is 100% correct. We get a lot of this at the last minute, 3 weeks ahead, that time frame. This is basically what I look at, and something that I'm concerned about on many levels with evergreen clauses. I've been mentioning that before. And if you miss that deadline and it just sneaks up on you, and I believe that would be right after a mayoral election or election for city council. So times are going to be a little awkward for people to be paying attention. I just want to make sure council is aware and has the option to respond. So if we're making an amendment, is there a way to add in language that triggers council being notified at least 30 to 60 days ahead of that notification date?
Yes, sir.
We might need to consider that.
Yes, sir. I would recommend it. We had in the agreement that it would be 180 days beforehand. If you want to get the council being notified 180 days or 90 days out to your drop dead date on continuing to do it, we could do that. Or if you want it to be something 120 days out, just the time frame is what we'd need.
I mean, that's some sort of safeguard in relation to being notified. Because I mean, you know, this could be an entirely different council at that time. Entirely, this whole screen may have changed by then. And I just want to make sure the obligations we put upon the next administration and the next council.
Yes, sir. Hopefully we're not using screens, but then.
Who knows, Phil? Who knows?
Okay,
Thank
it
you.
is nearly 20 after council. We probably do need to take a short break before we go into our 3:30 agenda session. So let's go ahead. Councilman Gilbert, you still have a hand up. You
Old hand.
old hand. Okay. All right, good. Miss Lydia, you got the button to close us down? No? Is that you, Vice Chair?
I can do it, yes.
Okay. Go ahead and close us down and restart us here in just a few minutes.
Sounds good.